I'm back. Mr. Clarke's back. Time to take a look at 1504. We'll look at India as it becomes a British colony. Some of the key objectives we're looking at today. We're going to take a look at the causes and effects of the Sepoy Rebellion. We'll explain the impact of British rule on India. We'll describe how the British and Indians were viewed by each other. And we'll trace the origins of Indian nationalism. One, when did the British first get involved in India? The British East India Company began trading with India in the 1600s. Two, how did the British react to the diversity of the Indian people? Well, the British used religious and cultural differences to heighten rivalries and stir resentment amongst different groups within India. A united Indian people against British rule might actually be a threat, but if you kind of segregate and separate them and create hostility amongst the people, that kind of breaks it down and kind of gives the British a little bit of an advantage. So this helped them to not only take control, but more importantly for the British to remain in power. Three were some of the positive things the British East India Company did in India. The company worked to improve roads, preserve peace, reduce banditry. It also introduced Western education and the legal procedures. Additionally, it tried to end slavery and reform the old caste system. They outlawed sati, or the custom of the widow throwing herself on a funeral fire of her husband. You can see the disturbing imagery here in this little drawing. These were people gathered around. It was kind of like the expectation that you create this fire at the funeral, and that the wife of the fallen husband would jump onto the fire and perish with their husband. Okay, four, despite some positive reforms, what was the real motive behind British colonization in India? Money. It's always profit. It's always the gold aspect. Obviously, the God aspect would be the idea of compassionately spreading new ideas, education, medicine, and things like that, infrastructure to the people. The British destroyed the Indian cotton and textile industries. What they did is they took the raw cotton, shipped it back to Great Britain, manufactured it into a finished product, and then shipped it back to India and sold it back to the Indian people for money. Five, who were the sepoys? They were Indian soldiers. That's just a name. The sepoys are just the Indian name for a soldier. They were recruited by the British to maintain control in India, by recruited force to serve the British. In response to the harsh treatment by the British, the sepoys revolted against the British officers in 1857. It took place in northern and central India. They killed many British, but eventually they were stopped. In response, the British slaughtered thousands of Indians, in some cases wiping out entire villages. And the reason and rationale as to why the Indians soldiers fought against the British and kind of revolted was this whole procedure here, as we see with number 7. The British citizens did not take into account the religious beliefs of the sepoy soldiers. It was very unpopular for many. So under unpopular British measures, such as having the sepoy soldiers travel overseas, which was against their religion, they allowed widows to remarry, violating Hindu religious beliefs. And then the British had the sepoys use rifle cartridges greased with animal fat, not knowing that biting off the tips of the cartridges to load the rifles was a violation of their Hindu religious beliefs. So you see here, this is the procedure in which the soldier was taught on how to load the rifle. Here, biting off the cartridge, which is greased in the animal fat, which was something that greatly outraged the religious Hindu Indian soldiers. How did British rule change after the Sepoy Rebellion? They tightened up control over India as the Parliament in 1858 officially made India part of Great Britain, basically annexed the colony of India. And just to point out once again, I really should have made more mention here. Here's the British military executing some of the Sepoy soldiers, as well as some villagers in the aftermath of the Sepoy Rebellion. So when you think about the legacy of the Sepoy Rebellion, it created a harsh bitterness between the Indian people and the British leadership. Whatever trust they may have had previous to the Sepoy Rebellion was completely wiped away because of the rebellion, both from the side of the British, who now could not perhaps trust the Indian people like they used to previously, and the Indian people seeing how a lot of the villagers, innocent men, women, and children were slaughtered by the British military, obviously seeded distrust amongst the native Indian people as well. Who was put in charge of India in 1858, a British viceroy or royal governor took control of India in the name of the Queen. What would the overall British economy include in India? Great Britain's own industries and banks and trading companies and overseas trade all would be part of the economy in India. 12. Why would machine-made textiles for Britain ruin India's hand-weaving industry? Instead of spending money on cloth made by hand, Indians saved money by buying the cheaper machine-made material from the British. 13. What did the British do to improve the efficiency and profits coming out of India? So now that they were officially annexed and part of the British Empire, they were now going to invest more in India because India, effectively for the British, was part of their country now. So building roads, which they did, railroad systems, telegraph lines, improving communication, improving agricultural productivity, modern medicine, the postal system. All these things are put into effect indirectly to benefit the Indian people, but more directly to impact the profit margin for Great Britain. Anytime something was done by the British, it was in the context or light of how this can aid or help the British, not in how it was helping the Indian people. If it helped the Indian people, that was a secondary benefit, kind of just so happened to work out that way. A lot of these improvements, as we look at number 14, what impact did the improvements have on the population of India? Popped up, led to a population explosion or growth in India. 15, why was Ram Mohan Roy called the founder of Indian nationalism? In what ways did he adopt Western culture? Along with setting up Hindu College in Calcutta, Roy set up educational societies for appreciating traditional Indian culture. He adapted to Western culture by having Hindu College teach in English and condemning certain traditions in Indian culture, such as Purdy and the caste system. 16. What might have led the majority of British people to dismiss Indian culture so quickly? The British thought they were racially and culturally superior to Indians. It's kind of the ethnocentrism that we mentioned before. They did not understand, care, or appreciate Indian culture. Very often, a group of people who are dismissive, they kind of just kind of toss to the side the natives' beliefs. They tried to impose Western culture in India. Eventually, India is going to begin to rise up. The Muslim League and the Indian National Congress are two groups. The Indian National Congress was formed to work towards Indian self-rule for both Muslim and Hindu nationalities. However, Hindus dominated the Indian National Congress, so the Muslim League was formed by Muslim nationalists and promoted the idea of a separate Muslim country or state. They moved closer to modern-day India, who led peaceful protests for Indian independence during the 1900s. Of course, Mohandas Gandhi. Here's a quote from Gandhi. Many people, especially ignorant people, want to punish you for speaking the truth, for being correct, and for being you. Never apologize for being correct or for being years ahead of your time. If you're right and you know it, speak your mind. Even if you are a minority of one, the truth is still the truth. Wise words from Gandhi indeed. When did India finally achieve independence? It took a very long period of time, 1947. shortly after the end of World War II. To avoid additional conflict, the Muslims actually got their wish. They actually created a separate Muslim country of Pakistan for Indian people. This is created out of the land in northern India. Still to this day, there's a lot of tension between Pakistan and India. You can see Pakistan located here, and here's India. This used to be just one country. The Pakistanians and the Indian people both have nuclear weapons. Therefore, they do have a conflict. There's a lot of danger along that border that they could exchange nuclear bombs, which would be devastating to the region. And of course, the very densely populated citizens who live in India, Pakistan, and neighboring China. Close to 3 million people live in just the regions of China, India, and Pakistan. And then finally, the lesson reflection. Why did British imperialists think Western education would benefit both Indians and the British? And why were they mistaken? Imperialists, they thought that being trained in Western ideas would lead Indians to appreciate and kind of gradually move into the acceptance of Western culture. They thought an educated class of Indians would work well with the British to promote their goals. However, British schooling and Western ideals of democracy eventually led to Indian nationalism, as they kind of understand what independence and nationalistic ideas were all about, and they kind of embraced their own independence, their own common history and culture. Hopefully, you enjoyed our lesson for today, and until next time, Mr. Clarke is out.